Hey, what is happening, you Squish Squirtle? In today's video, I'm going to take a look at all the best new archetypes to come to us from the Silver Tempest Pokemon TCG set. These are all going to be decks that are heavily influenced by the set, not decks that just kind of got a slight upgrade and maybe got a little bit better overall. These are all going to be basically brand new decks brought to us by the Silver Tempest set. Let's get into it. Up first, we've got the Reggie VMax, 210 HP. The Transistor ability, your basic lightning Pokemon's attacks do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon, and then Max Thunder and Lightning, 220 damage, Lightning colorless, and then it can't attack on the next turn. So the ability, obviously, buffing the basic lightning Pokemon, and the attack plus the HP combination really isn't enough to stand up to most of the top decks in the format, and that's why you combine it with the Vikavolt V. So this deck is heavily focused around the Vikavolt V, but Vikavolt V wouldn't be able to stand up on its own in this format without the buff from the Transistor ability of the Reggie VMax. And Vikavolt isn't the only attacker in this deck. Of course, it's the main attacker with the Paralyzing Bolt, 50 damage, and then during our opponent's next turn, they can't play any item cards from their hand for a Lightning and a Colorless, and it has the Super Zap Cannon for Lightning Colorless for 190, and we discard 2 energies attached to this Vikavolt. So we use Vikavolt early with the Paralyzing Bolt to slow our opponent down, draw some early prize cards, and then we switch over to using Super Zap Cannons, or even attacking with the Reggie VMax itself with the Max Thunder and Lightning. Of course, the Transistor ability, that plus 30 damage, makes a huge difference to the Paralyzing Bolt. Item lock is super annoying to deal with, but when we're only doing 50 damage, it's not going to be enough to really slow down and put a ton of pressure on your opponent. So they combo super well together, and this really is the only way to play the Reggie VMax as of right now. I think there's nothing else really great that it works with. If the Transistor ability worked on non-basic lightning Pokemon, it could probably just be a deck by itself, but it doesn't, so you got to combo with something, and Vikavolt V really is the perfect fit. So in this list specifically, a super aggressive take on the deck. We're really trying to pull off the turn 1 Paralyzing Bolt through the combination of a Melanie and then the attachment of turn of a Lightning Energy. And actually with this build specifically, I've been choosing to go second, so my opponent has less time to draw cards. They don't get to play a draw supporter on the first turn of the game going first, which means they'll see less item cards, which means they'll play less item cards and get less utility out of them before I start to use the Paralyzing Bolt. So I'm choosing to go second with this build, trying to pull off that turn 1 Paralyzing Bolt. Aggressive options in draw support with the Crobat and Luminion. We got the Radiant Greninja in here for the concealed cards, a little bit extra draw support, and helps get our water energy into the discard pile very, very consistently. And then we Melanie it onto the Vikavolt and start attacking. Got a Drapion in here because the Mew matchup is a little bit iffy without it, so I've added the Drapion in here as well. Heavy on the Stormy Mountains because finding those early basics is important. You know, if we want a Quick Ball or Ultra Ball for the Crobat or Luminion, we also still somehow need to find Vikavolt, and we do want to start setting up the Reggie Vs as soon as possible as well. Really heavy on the energy count here. I got 4 speed, 3 basic lightning, 5 water energy. It's really hard to find the water energy. I've been increasing the account up to the 5, and then I've also added 3 energy search in here to help us find that energy in the early game. Super important. And then I've added another new card to this Vikavolt deck, 2 Forest Seal Stones with the Star Alchemy ability. We can attach this to one of our V Pokemon, and then we can use the V-Star power, search our deck for a card, and put it into our hand. So when we're trying to pull off this turn 1 combo play to get off the turn 1 Paralyzing Bolt, we might have opened, I don't know, the Drapion. That would suck. We don't want to do that. But to get the Drapion out of the active to the bench and hopefully be attacking with the Vikavolt in the first turn, we'll need to find Melanie, an attachment for turn to the Vikavolt itself, and a switch card to move our Drapion into our Vikavolt. That's a lot of things. We might draw some of them, but not all of them. But 4 Sealstone can literally become anything. So if we find the Melanie, the energy, and the switch card, maybe we use the 4 Sealstone to get a water energy, and then Greninja discards the water energy. We use the Melanie on the Vikavolt. We switch card to the Vikavolt, then we attach the Lightning, and we're turn 1 Paralyzing Bolt. So we play 2 of these. Can't use 2 of them, but we play 2 of them so we find it sooner, and then this can become any card we might need for whatever situation we're in, because it's such a powerful card, being able to find any card in our deck. As far as what I'm kind of trying out right now and might switch around, I currently have 2 Cape of Toughness and 2 Choice Belt. Initially, I was trying out a heavier Choice Belt build, but I thought I'd give the Cape of Toughness a shot, and so far, it's been solid. I'm not sold on it yet, and overall, I might just want a little bit more aggression, a little bit more consistency, so I could see myself cutting the Capes out of here, cutting back on probably the water energy, maybe one of the draw supporters, and putting in 4 trekking shoes to have a little bit more aggression to get off that turn 1 Paralyzing Bolt. But for right now, trying out the Capes and just upping the consistency of the deck still through the energy search and so on. So that's the Reggie Let's go ahead. Let's move on to the next deck. Up next, we've got the Reggie VStar, 280 HP, the Apex Dragon Attack, Grass, Fire, choosing a an attack from one of your dragon Pokemon in your discard pile and use it as its attack. And there's a ton of powerful options. We're going to go over them. There's a couple different ways to play this deck that I think are also pretty powerful. So not just one way to play the Reggie Drago, but a couple. And there's also a couple I still haven't tried out yet that could still be pretty good as well. But the ones I have tried out, I've enjoyed so far. I have 2 different builds I'm going to be sharing with you in just a second. And it's got the Legacy Star VStar power. Once on your turn, you may discard the top 7 cards of your deck, then put up to 2 cards from your discard pile into your hand. Any 2 cards. It doesn't have to be any of the 7 we discarded. Let's go ahead. Let's take a look at those lists. Up first, by far my favorite way to play the Reggie Drago VStar is alongside the Rillaboom with the Voltage Beat ability. Once on your turn, you may search your deck for up to 2 grass energy and attach them to one of your Pokemon, then shuffle your deck. So this is how we accelerate our energy into play in this build of Reggie Drago, to be using the Apex Dragon. And we have a decent amount of room in here, so we have quite a few different attackers, and some of them we have in here that we won't be able to really play in other builds, like the Garchomp V, by far my favorite attack to use in this deck with the Sonic Strike. Discard 3 energy from this Pokemon. This attack does 220 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. So you have to discard 3 energy, but when you got a Rillaboom or 2 in play, accelerating energy into play every turn, that's really not too big of a deal. And we do play a lot of energy recovery in this deck to constantly keep the energy flowing from the Rillabooms and attachments for turn. So being able to snipe 220 damage, clean up Crobats, Luminions, knock out your opponent's V Pokemon before they have the chance to become V-Stars or V-Maxes. Super powerful option in this deck. And by far, like I said, by far my favorite attack in this entire deck. The other options we have in here, got the Flygon V with the Impulse for 320 damage. Once again, if we discard 3 energy from this Pokemon, 1-hit KOs VMax Pokemon. Most VMax Pokemon, Kyurem VMax a little bit out of range, but we can 1-hit KO Muse if they don't have the Oricorio in play and stuff like that. The Duraludon VMax, a clean 220, ignores all effects on our opponent's active Pokemon. V-Guard energy, not going to slow us down. Neither will the Miltanks. And then the heavy hitter, Giratina VStar with the Lost Impact, 280. 2 energy from the Pokemon into the Lost Zone. Once again, going to be going through the energy pretty quickly. Rillaboom keeps those energy flowing. And then last, for the one prize matchups, really good up against like the Reggie's matchup and stuff, the Guja V-Star with the Rolling Iron. Or if we ever can't like 1-hit KO our opponent's active, we have to go for like a 2-hit KO route. We also want to make sure we're not getting 1-hit KO'd. So the Rolling Iron is perfect for that. 200 damage and reduce the damage we take by 80. The consistency in this deck, Crobat, Luminion, and a Radiant Greninja. Only a 302 Rillaboom, but we generally only need to set up 1, and we have the option to get another one set up at some point as well. And the reason it's so easy to set up the Rillaboom in this deck is through the Legacy Star ability from the Reggie Drago. Playing a Research for turn into the Legacy Star almost always guarantees a turn 2 Rillaboom. I don't think I've whiffed the turn 2 Rillaboom yet, except for when I've whiffed the turn 1 Reggie Drago V or Grookey. So I could definitely see an argument for adding a Force Grookey in here just to up that consistency. Instead, I've gone down about the route of adding some Stormy Mountains, so that way our Ultra Balls and Quick Balls can go find the Grookey. Ideally, we draw into a Stormy Mountains or the Reggie Drago V, and then we can go ahead and use that to go ahead and get the Reggie Drago V. Also, we do need to make sure we're countering our opponent's Path to the Peaks, because we have a lot of really powerful abilities we need early on in this deck. Like I said, the Legacy Star, Crobat, Luminion, or Greninja all help us get through our deck really quickly. So we're going to need to utilize those fairly often. A lot of energy recovery in here. We have a lot of cards that discard energy pretty fast. We also have the Radiant Greninja. That's a main part of our draw engine, discarding energy. So we got 2 Energy Recycler and 1 Ordinary Rod, because the Legacy Star can be a little bit iffy. Sometimes we discard our Reggie Dragos or even stuff like our Luminion and Crobat and want to recover those for later uses. So 1 of Ordinary Rod in here as well. 4 Evolution Incense, 4 Ultra Ball, 4 Quick Ball. Got to find our Dragon Pokemon. Got to get them in the discard pile alongside finding our Drago and our Boomer. And then for the support account, 4 Research, 2 Serena, and 1 Marnie. Not a ton of supporters in this deck, but we usually only need to use 2, maybe 3 draw supporters, and sometimes a Serena to close out the game. But Garchomp's pretty good at closing out games as well with the Sonic Strike. And then 4 and 7 on the energy count, 4 Fire, 7 Grass. So actually not a very high energy count, but when the Boomer's accelerating them out of the deck, we don't always have to attach for turn. And to be honest, it's pretty easy to set up 2 Rillaboom by turn like 3 or 4 with this deck as well. So then we can be getting a whole ton of energy in play, and we only have to be worried about drawing into the Fire Energy. Okay, that's the first build of Reggie Drago. Let's go ahead. Let's take a look at the next. Up next, I do have the Arceus VStar Reggie Drago VStar build. So we're using Arceus in the early game with a Trinity Nova, or if we go second on our first turn, we could use that Trinity Charge. And then we're abusing, of course, the power of Starbirth as the powerhouse of consistency that it is to help us set up very cleanly on that second turn. Then we're getting all those energy from the Trinity Charge, from the Trinity Nova. We're putting it on our Reggie Drago, and then we're using Reggie Drago to utilize Giratina VStar and Gudra VStar. But that's kind of it. Those are only the 2 we have in here. Right now, if you want to put in like a Duraludon, that'd be fine as well. But it's a lot harder for this deck to utilize some of the cooler, more interesting Dragon Pokemon because we don't have the continuous energy acceleration from the like we do with the Rillaboom build. So we can't really use the Garchomp V or the Flygon because, you know, if we attack with Arceus, then our opponent knocks out our Arceus. If we then attack with Reggie Drago to copy Garchomp, and we discard all three of those energy, we just have 0 energy in play except for our attachment return. So that doesn't really go great in this build. But to be honest, just the option of Giratina and Goodra gives us an amazing matchup spread overall. There's so many matchups. Well, there's a ton of matchups where Giratina is very good against. But then when we hit some of the more niche matchups like the Reggies, one prizer decks, or even like tank matchups where our opponent is also trying to, you know, survive for a while and our Giratina can't quite get a one-hit KO, we just start attacking with the Goodra and that fits in super well. So this build I do think is a little bit more consistent and it has a little bit better of a late game than the Rillaboom build. The Rillaboom build is definitely more aggressive, trying to get in their face early and fast, and sometimes comes up a little bit short in the late game with lack of resources, or just doesn't get those super explosive starts you're looking for. But it's a lot easier to get a clean Arceus start in a deck like this. So definitely both fairly strong as far as the Reggie Drago decks go. Not super strong overall is the Reggie Drago, unfortunately, but still one of the best decks to come out of the Silver Tempest format. We got the B-Barrel in here for the draw engine, a Crobat for some consistency. We got the Punkaboo in here because Path is pretty annoying. Turn 2 Starbirth, very important. My current Radiant Pokemon in here is the Radiant Gardevoir, but I could definitely see trying out the Radiant Charizard instead. We do play 4 basic fire energy in here. So there is a possibility to, you know, set up 1 or 2 Reggie Drago and then possibly also set up the Radiant Charizard throughout a game. And we do have some aggressive options as far as damage goes. We do have the double choice belt, and I am currently rocking the powerful energy in here to give the option of a turn 2 Trinity Nova for 220 damage to be able to KO V Pokemon on turn 2. And so far that's felt great. I bounce back and forth between the Zigzagoon and the powerful energy. Currently I'm sitting on the powerful energy, but I could see going back to the Zigzagoon. Just been trying out the powerful energy for right now. But combo that with a choice belt or Zigzagoon with a choice belt, and yeah, turn 2 Arceus can be one-hit KOing V Pokemon, which is a pretty big deal, a pretty big option, especially when we're kind of a more aggressive trade back and forth deck. We go from the Arceus into the Tina, taking one-hit KOs there. It's a pretty good 1-2 punch to line up. And then whenever stuff kind of slows down or we want to slow it down, that's really where the Goodra comes into play. So heavy on the Marnie. I've got a couple Path in here. Turn 2 Path is really, really good against other Arceus decks, and also really, really good up against Lugia. Kind of force them to have that stadium bump to be able to pull off their ability to get the Archeops in play. And if they can't do a turn 2, that's like a free turn to work with. Maybe they get out the next turn, but maybe that's a little bit too late. So I've been really loving the 2 Path. Of course, we have Starbirth to help find it on that second turn. And sometimes we just draw into it more aggressively in that matchup on turn 1, or even up against Mew can obviously be a great tool to utilize as well. Heavy on the Marnie, really good up against Lost Zone decks, and yeah, not too much else to say about this one. So let's go ahead, let's move on to some Lugia decks. Lugia, of course, the powerhouse of the Silver Tempest set, and probably of the Silver Tempest format, to be honest. 280 HP, the Tempest Dive, 220 for 4 colorless energy. You may discard a stadium, and then the Summoning Star, you may put up to 2 colorless Pokemon that don't have a rule box from your discard pile onto your bench. And of course, this combos insanely well with the Archeops. I've got a couple different builds of Lugia to show off today, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at them. The first build we're going to be taking a look at is the colorless build of Lugia VStar. A little bit more consistent than the Aurora build that we're going to be talking about next, but they both try and do the same thing. Got a really thick Lugia line, 4 Archeops, try and get 2 Archeops into the discard pile, get them back into play with the Summoning Star, and then use Primal Turbo to accelerate a bunch of special energy in play and utilize our attackers. The difference between this build and the Aurora build is we don't have that many other different attackers besides the Lugia. 4/4 Lugia. I do have 1 Regigigas in here for the Mew matchup, and then we can always attack with Archeops as well, which you do in quite a few matchups. But this build, unlike the Aurora build, only has a colorless energy, and we only have colorless attackers, which makes it a little bit easier to consistently attack with the Pokemon we attack with game to game. We don't have any of those awkward draws or awkward discards that might lead to us not being able to attack with our Aurora attackers. Also, prize cards become a little bit less involved for the same reason. So a little bit more consistent, but a little bit lower of a power ceiling in this build compared to the Aurora build. The other things we get to have in here as well, have a little bit more space in the deck, so we have a little bit of a heavy path to the peak count for a little bit of disruption. Specifically in the mirror match, it's going to be very powerful at slowing down your opponent, give you a little bit more control over the board state. 2 Charon's Care for a little bit of healing as well, and we can afford to kind of make multiple of our Lugias a little bit more tankier. We have a heavy count of the V-Guard energy. We also have a pretty heavy gift energy count as well with 2 of those. It doesn't seem heavy, but we're only setting up like 2 or 3 attackers, and you can search out the gift energy whenever you want. The 2 gift energies are quite a bit heavier count than you usually see in the Aurora builds of 0 or 1. And this becomes kind of like a pseudo draw engine in the deck, because if we set up a really big Lugia that our opponent kind of has to respect and take a knockout on, then we get to definitely draw some cards off of the gift energy. So we get to play all these other different colorless energy in higher counts, which makes our Lugias more powerful. We just don't have the other powerful attackers through the Aurora energy. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at the Aurora build now. The main difference, of course, is that we have the Aurora energy in here, which allows us to use a bunch of different attackers, and I have a lot of them in here. Those staples are really the Yveltal and the Radiant Charizard. A lot of people include the Raikou as well, so I have that in my list currently as well, but there's a lot of different attackers you can play in here with a lot of different special energy. I've seen SQs and Wash Energy, Manaphy and Wash Energy as like an option to stop Sableye from KOing your Manaphy. There's a whole bunch of different things you can play in here. Yep, like I said, Yveltal, Radiant Charizard are the staples, and that's the power of playing this Aurora energy build, is you get to play all of these cool, powerful cards, which is definitely why it leads to being the more popular of the 2 builds. And it is just kind of a ton of fun to be able to use stuff like the Amazing Destruction, or even attack with the Charizard with the Combustion Blast out of nowhere on turn 2, and of course the Amazing Shot on the Raikou, which is a little bit less good than the Yveltal or the Charizard, still great when you can pull it off. In this build, currently the only other tech Pokemon I really have here is the Stoutland V with the Double Dip Fangs. Super powerful up against these Lost Zone decks. Double Dip Fangs, if it knocks out a basic Pokemon, you get to draw an extra prize card. And Lost Zone Pokemon in these Lost Box decks don't have a ton of HP. So you get a couple powerful energy on here. You could be doing 60, 80, all the way up to 120 damage KOing Cramorants. So the Stoutland is super powerful right now because there's a ton of Lost Zone boxes that people are really loving. So I definitely recommend you guys rocking the Stoutland. But I don't think any of these are mainstays besides the Yveltal and the Charizard. So as the format shifts and changes, you want to be able to, be flexible. Cut your Stoutland, cut your Raikou, put in some other tech cards. I don't rock the Dunsparce or Manaphy currently myself, but those are of course very, very powerful tech cards to include in Lugia as well. And that's what makes Lugia such a powerful deck, especially with this Aurora energy build, is depending on how the format shifts and changes to try and deal with how powerful Lugia is, Lugia can kind of shift and change alongside it and always keep pace. So it's an insanely powerful deck. By far the best deck in the game is the Aurora energy Lugia, by far the most powerful. The colorless build, of course, like I said, also powerful in its own right, but not having these options like the Yveltal and the Charizard that can kind of come out of nowhere and take massive KOs super efficiently, it's just kind of hard to compete with. And that's going to do it. My top decks from Silver Tempest. These aren't all of the decks that came out of the Silver Tempest set, but these I think are by far the most powerful. So if you're looking for a new fun Silver Tempest deck to bring to a tournament, whether it be online or IRL, I definitely recommend trying out one of these. If y'all enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like. If you're enjoying the content, be sure to subscribe, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.